Hello, everybody. Mark Webster here and Bill Green, and we're here to introduce you to the FMC Meetinghouse electrification project in preparation for our Sunday threshing session on February 11th. We'll start with a bit of background on some of the greening we've done at FMC in the past, and then provide some context and dive into the specifics of the project. And just for introductions, I'm a member of the Trustees Committee, co-chair. And Bill, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm a professor at MIT, work with the MIT Energy Initiative.
Great. So in the past, we've been working on greening the facility for quite a few years. Things such as changing out light bulbs from incandescent to more efficient compact fluorescents and now LEDs. We've been trying to reduce waste in the kitchen by not using disposable dishes and using cloth napkins and so on, composting. On the facility side, we back in 2010 engaged a consultant to do an energy and water assessment report. The name of the company was Enerspective, and there's a picture of the front page of the report here. And they were terrific. They provided us a lot of ideas how we could improve our energy and water performance, both in terms of the building enclosure, doing things such as insulation and tightening up windows, our heating equipment, our hot water, all the gamut, lighting. So we've been chipping away at their recommendations over the years and made some good progress. Part of which was in 2012, we had a volunteer day organized by an organization called HEAT, and a bunch of community members gathered on a weekend along with some staff from the HEAT organization, and we did things like weather stripping and added insulation and maybe changed out some light bulbs and put in low flow water savers on some of the showers and so on. So that was a fun day. And back in 1975, even before all this happened, young friends did some work with installing insulation in the third floor of the Friends Center. So those are some examples of some of the work we've done over the years. More recently, we've done some big improvements on the Meetinghouse, including putting in storm windows. And you may have noticed if you've been to the Meetinghouse, those went up just a month or so ago, a couple of months maybe, but they should really help tighten up those windows. We also rebuilt or had the windows at the Friends Center rebuilt to tighten those up. So basically refurbish them so they've got new gaskets and tighter to improve their performance. And that was funded by a generous grant from the Cambridge Historical Commission, which we were grateful to receive. We've also been purchasing green electricity through the city of Cambridge. It's 100% green, so we opted up to the 100% green, which means it's from all renewable sources and could be considered carbon-free in terms of emissions. So it's coming from wind and solar and other sources that are not contributing to climate change. And just in January of last year, I guess that was, we had a blower door test and thermal imaging in the Meetinghouse. A contractor came and put a big fan on the door leading out to the ramp and turned it on and was able to it's a way to determine how leaky the envelope is. So by sucking the air out of the building and seeing how much air comes in, or really looking at the pressure differential between the inside and the outside, you can estimate how leaky the building is. So the consultant identified some areas where there were some leaks, and we plan to address those and make that building envelope even tighter as part of this process. I'm going to turn it over to Bill.
The concern about emissions, much of it is driven by the fact that the global climate is shifting. The temperature is rising primarily because we humans are emitting carbon dioxide but burning fossil fuels. And you can see here, this plot shows the The curve is showing the carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere as they're going up as measured. And the blue bars and red bars are showing the temperature, the average temperature across the Earth. And you can see how that's been going up, driven by the rise in the CO2. So in response to that, most countries on the Earth agreed to the Paris Agreement that all the countries are going to cooperate to try to reduce CO2 emissions to try to protect the climate. And the United States calculated out how it should reduce its CO2 emissions to try to meet the agreed goal from the Paris Agreement. And so you can see this line, the black is actual emissions in the United States, and the blue and the green and the red are showing the plan of what we have to do to try to meet the Paris target to get the climate stabilized. Now, if we get more local, in Massachusetts, about 1/3 of the CO2 that humans emit in Massachusetts is coming from heating buildings. And it's pretty challenging because almost all the buildings in Massachusetts now are heated by either natural gas or heating oil. Both are fossil fuels and emit a lot of CO2. And people have tried to figure out how best to avoid that. And there's a consensus among all the engineers and the policy people that heat pumps are the most practical way to significantly reduce the CO2 emissions. And the reason why heat pumps is they're much more efficient than other ways of heating buildings with electricity, such as space heaters. And also, heat pumps have a benefit that they provide air conditioning in the summer, which is becoming more important because as the climate warms, we have more very hot days in the summer. And so both the Massachusetts state government and the federal government and many governments around the world have recognized the need to convert furnaces to heat pumps. And so Massachusetts and the federal government are promoting and subsidizing heat pump installations in different ways. And Massachusetts has its own goal to try to get its CO2 down to meet the Paris Agreement and to meet the federal goals. And to meet that goal, Massachusetts is going to need about 75,000 buildings to convert to heat pump heating per year from now until 2030. But last year, fewer than 20,000 were actually installed. So we really need to increase the pace to meet the targets. And the challenge here is that building owners are not used to using the heat pumps, and they have to get comfortable with the idea of replacing their furnaces with the heat pumps. And I think also the legislatures need to figure out more effective ways to help encourage people and help this to really happen. But I think one thing that we can do as the Friends is that if we do this project, it'll be another example that you can actually do this. You can do a heat pump, it's going to be successful. And each time it'll encourage members of the meeting and the broader community to make this change. Back to Mark.
Great. Thank you, Bill. Terrific to hear that background. So we're going to pivot now into the Meetinghouse project. And the gist of it is that we want to convert the Meetinghouse, which is currently heated using fuel oil, dirty, emitting, climate damaging fuel oil, into a clean electric system. We're thinking probably should have shown this slide a bit earlier, but we got it here. This is actually a minute from Friends meeting from 2008 on carbon emissions reduction. And entire minute is not here, but just to give you an idea of what's in there, I'm going to read some quotes from that minute. Faced with firm scientific evidence of climate change and knowledge of the devastating consequences for all life on Earth if it is unchecked, Friends meeting at Cambridge feels called to faithful action. We are prepared to take substantial measures to reduce our own households and the meeting's greenhouse gas polluting. We commit as a meeting community to a conscientious investigation of and planning for measurable reductions of our carbon footprint. We commit to a first goal of at least a 20% reduction of our own levels of CO2 emissions by 2020, as recommended by the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. For the meetings facilities, we will use our 2005 emissions as a baseline for calculating the reduction. As we identify other ways we contribute to the degradation of the Earth systems, we will seek to address those as well. Finally, we envision that this process will include contracting for professional consultation regarding the costs and efficacy of our options, and that it will progress incrementally, though without delay. I think this is really important context for the project that's being proposed here, the electrification of the meeting house, it really fits perfectly with our faith-driven goals to reduce our impact on the earth and our contribution to climate change. So a little background about the heating system that we have. I didn't have a good photo of it, but that's a photo from the introspective report I showed you earlier, showing it the top part of the old furnace in the basement of the meeting house. It's quite old, antiquated. The 2010 introspective report figured it was at the end of its life back then. So clearly we're even closer now and really can't rely on this piece of equipment to keep us going for much longer. Furthermore, it produces all those greenhouse gas emissions. It consumes about 1,300 gallons of heating oil per year, which is roughly equivalent to the emissions associated with about over 30,000 miles of automobile travel. So it's quite a significant impact. Even in the meeting house, a fairly small building, which is not used 100% of the time. So how do we approach this project? We needed professional guidance, so we hired a company called Elevated Design. They're a mechanical engineering firm, and they came highly recommended from Mass MIPL, the faith-based climate organization or green building organization. So we felt comfortable going with them, and they've done a terrific job for us. We've really been happy. They produced design drawings and recommended several contractors, and we reached out to all of them, and we received 2 solid proposals. The preferred proposal to do the work is from Guardian Energy Management Solutions. So that's the one that we are bringing to meeting for consideration. The cost of the project is predicted to be $143,000, and then we can receive a rebate from utilities expected to be $20,000 to get the total cost down to $123,000. And then Massachusetts Interfaith Power and Light, there you go. So they're the ones who helped us locate Guardian to do our consulting. And you can check out their website if you'd like more information about that organization. So the benefits of making this change are that we will be fossil fuel free with our 100% green electricity. All the emissions currently associated with heating the meeting house will be gone. Furthermore, as Bill mentioned, we can make use of air conditioning on hot summer days. It'll also improve our ventilation and filtration. It'll be a more healthy environment. We won't need to keep the windows open, wasting yet more heat in the winter. The system has very high quality filtration built into the air circulation to filter out viruses. So there's a benefit there. We were worried when the project started, would they be able to make use of the existing ductwork that the oil furnace plugs into? And we were just delighted to learn that it can. We can plug this new electric system into the existing ductwork, so we don't need to like rip apart the walls or anything like that to put new ductwork in. So that was great news. Furthermore, we expect the heating costs will be reduced compared to the oil furnace. So good news there. And from a mission approach or mission-driven reason is that we can also use this experience to encourage other faith communities to move away from fossil fuels. And as Bill mentioned, maybe not even just faith communities, even members of our community who can be made familiar with this technology and may wish to install it in their own homes. Some questions that have arisen about the project. Yeah, doing the meeting house is great, but what about the Friends Center? And we do have a slightly better situation at the Friends Center because we have gas-fired boilers, which is still a fossil fuel, but not as dirty as oil. And the boilers are not as old as the equipment that's in the meeting house. We're reluctant to pull out equipment that's still in good working order to make a change. But when those boilers get near the end of their life, it'll be perfectly appropriate at that point to replace those with an electric system, which is just the way the world's going. Why not just replace the existing oil-fired furnace in the meeting house in kind with another oil-fired system. It's true this would be cheaper in the short term, but it would be short-sighted because we would then be installing technology which is basically being phased out. And if you're hoping to install something that's going to last 25, 50 years, it's a necessity, really, that our nation and the world be not emitting fossil fuels within that time frame, even within the next 30 years. So installing that equipment now, fossil fuel-based equipment, is just not the right thing to do. And it would not fit within our stated commitment, as noted in the minute that I read earlier, to do all we can within our own community to reduce those emissions. How are we going to cover the cost? We propose to cover the cost of $123,000 with a combination of funds that have been allocated to facility maintenance and upkeep, and also draw from our restricted investment funds, which are sufficient to cover the cost. And I'll just mention as well that we've sat with the FMC Climate Action Group, and they are wholeheartedly behind this approach and support it, and we certainly welcome that support. So there's a email address here for trustees@fmcquaker.org, and that'll go to myself and David White, the co-clerk of the trustees, and we're happy anytime to answer any questions that you may have. We look forward to bringing this presentation and discussing with you in person on Sunday. I think that's the end of our presentation. David joined us. David, do you have anything you'd like to add while we're recording?
Very good job. Thank you.